I was already slow with that one. All right, this is the Coast to Coast Combat Hour. Ed Carbajal and Matthew Hawkins here, as always, brought to you by AllAccessMMA.com. Make sure you check out All Access MMA for your MMA news. This week, we are joined by managing editor of Sherdog.com, one of the co-hosts of the Living Death podcast, and statistician extraordinaire, Jay Pettry. Jay, been wanting to talk to you for a while, man. I mean, you've been doing a lot of homework and ABC classes, and it looks like you got a lot going on in your life.
Yeah, man. Well, first of all, I'd like to say I very much appreciate the introduction. I would like to mention I'm not managing. I'm just the associate editor, which is it's all good. We can keep that for Mike Furley. I don't want your job, Mike. I know what it takes.
Wait a second. What is it? What did I had your?
It's all good. It's all good. Don't worry about it.
My mistake. Again, I'm getting over a cold, folks.
It's all you're getting over a cold. It's all good. Yeah. I work at Sherdog. I work with Sherdog Fight Finder and all the information there. And yes, this past week has been fascinating for a lot of reasons. So I am very happy to be here and hanging out with you because Ed, we've dragged you on the show, and Matt and I have been chatting on forums for like 5 years from now. So it's good to to get this whole thing here. So I'm happy to be on the coast with y'all.
No, that's great. I appreciate your time. Why don't we just jump into kind of what got you into MMA and kind of work our way towards my questions about Fight Finder and the history kind of some of Sherdog stuff. But, we all kind of look about the same age, I'm guessing. So what was it that got you into the sport and what allowed you to get a job with such a good website as Sherdog?
I started back when I was taking karate when I was like 6 or 7, and my dojo was showing off some of the big fights on TV at the time. I'm 6 or 7, whatever. It's like the OG UFCs. I remember the first one I really remember seeing was UFC 6, Tank Abbott and all that. The taking on the Hawaiian art of bone breaking, all of that glory, and it captured me, and I very much enjoyed it. But I was a kid, so I can't buy pay-per-views, and so I was into it for many years as I grew up, and I stayed with karate. But I really fell for it big time when I was in graduate school and I was studying for political science and doing a lot of stat work, and I was doing stats for all kinds of elections and blah blah blah. And I wanted to use my stat knowledge for other different kinds of areas. And at that particular time, Cage Potato, you guys remember Cage Potato?
Oh, yeah.
Back when they were more than just a very snarky Twitter page. Cage Potato had a really funny post about the Eminem curse. If you guys remember the Eminem curse, which is it was the conventional wisdom that fighters that would walk out with their walkout music being Eminem would lose their fights. And it happened to be in a span of time where Tito Ortiz would always walk out to like Mosh or whatever, and he'd always lose. There was that really bad stretch of Tito Ortiz fights before, what he left and before the Bader fight and all that stuff. And I wanted to say, hey, I can actually do something with this here. I can find the data and actually say, let's myth bust this. Let's prove the Eminem curse. And I really went in there and full blast. And as I started doing this, I thought, okay, there's something to this walkout music stuff. Like for years, the walkout song, Sweet Child of Mine by Guns N' Roses. classic rock anthem song. Tons of fighters should use it. And every single one of them had lost their fights. That's super weird. Like, of course, correlation doesn't equal causation. It's a bunch of different fighters over a bunch of different years. And obviously we're not claiming that Guns N' Roses was sealed their fate for them, but it was just those kind of weird questions. And I went up and I worked. I got noticed by Vice back when Fightline was rolling, and I did essentially like a pop-up video type of graphical infographic series. And then once the pivot to video happened, I actually kind of just reached out to managing editor Mike Fridley, and I said, hey, I have this very unique set of skills. And it's all been gravy from there, and it's wild. It's crazy to think about it that it's just how it turned into that. It turned into some goofball that was just like, well, that's weird. Into look at all this weird before us, guys.
Yeah,
there's so much weird. This sport's so weird,
and it keeps getting weirder.
Oh my goodness!
And before we get into the really weird, the most recent weird. Because you talking about music and I remember when DMX passed away, you put up that graphic.
That's right.
of like the amount of times his music was used, and the running joke still, at least with the older heads at where I train at Advanced Martial Arts in North Brunswick, is because we had Ricardo Romero fought in the UFC. He's from our gym. Jay McLean and Strikeforce and stuff like that. So like we back when they were fighting, which is like early 2000s, that was like the thing that was like the running joke in our gym was like, if you walk into DMX, you're gonna win a fight.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's true enough, because I know you put up like the amount of how many fighters use his music, but I'd like to know. I mean, if you have time,
I can pull up I know off the top of my head, right without looking at all. Very high win rate, disproportionately high. Like, because essentially, I mean, if you really think about it, with a big enough sample size, with enough fights and enough fighters walking out, everyone should be about 50%. Just how these things work. But DMX, last I checked, was sky high, was one of the highest for any artist. And as of August 3rd, 2020, about a 60% or 0.600 winning percentage. That's pretty darn good compared to like AC/DC, which is down in the tank, and other artists like that. So yeah, there's something there. I don't know if it's just a disproportionate amount of fighters that are super good.
You would think the newer generation of UFC fan would recognize like a lot of people like Brian Ortega. He used to use DMX.
X gonna give it to you.
Stopped using it, and look at him now.
Caitlin Chukagian definitely skewed the numbers because
that's what I was gonna say.
Yeah, because blonde fighter walks out to wear the hood at, and then she is a very high winning percentage in the UFC. So yeah, it's obviously skewed to a degree, but at the same time, it's fun to look at. Like Donald Cerrone. I mean, Cowboy by Kid Rock has a 600 winning percentage because he has a 600 winning percentage in the UFC or whatever.
Yeah,
so it's fun like that.
So I mean, the whole reason why I had to get you on here was because of we got to talk about it. I know it's a few weeks old, folks might not remember it, but I know you're still swimming in the deep rabbit hole that is Askar Mozharov and his fight record or whatever it is. Like apparently he's fudged his numbers, and there's a couple of different names out there, and God knows what else. I mean, so like I think the last post you did on it was just before or when you came back from the conference, but like, where are we at with Mr. Mozharov?
First of all, I'd like to say, because I know Askar Mozharov is watching the show right now. Hey, what's up? There have been kind of questions and concerns, and like, you're kicking the guy while he's down. He's already out of the UFC. This has never been a personal type of thing. This is data. This is information. This is an investigation.
Yeah.
As I wrote, I wrote a piece for Sherdog and the Fight Finder files called "It's All Been a Pack of Lies," riffing on Phil Collins in the air tonight, and it was entirely about his career, which his record started. This is the very beginning. It started on other databases at 25-7. 25-7 was where he began when he was in the UFC. Preparing to fight Alonzo Menifield. I think on Sherdog we had 21-8 or something like that because we couldn't verify certain things. As of right now, to skip ahead, he is currently, so remember, 25-7. He is 15-14. Of course, that includes his loss to Alonzo Menifield, but that's a pretty dramatic change from 25-7. That's 10 losses on another database. I think 2 other databases actually that had, and it's not to slight other databases because we get crazy information and just how this thing works. And this was supposed to be the end of the story when Mozharov initially, how it started. Let's be clear here, because sometimes it gets a little muddled about how it started. It began when Askar Mozharov personally, on his own Facebook page, hunted down one of the guys I work with on Sherdog Fight Finder. I don't even have the guy's Facebook page. I like a private Facebook page. This guy with like 800 friends. I'm not talking like a fan account, like an Instagram with 800,000 followers. It's just this is my personal face. Tracked this guy down and demanded that we remove a loss from his page and we correct the record for him. So this guy is hitting us up on it was the 24th, I think, before his June 4th. So it was like May 24th. It was 2 weeks before his fight. And he himself is hitting up Fight Finder to try and get this record straight. And that prompted an investigation because we're like, wait, hold on a second. Time out. We already disproved this one and had more information to it. And luckily we have international body of Fight Finder staff members. It's about 50 of us all around the world, and are able to cobble this information from where the fights happened. And we were able to review down the line one by one to get here. And I believe, let's think, before his UFC fight, I believe we had him at 19 and 12, I think. So that's 4 more here that have fallen off since his UFC fight. I can recall, I actually made Twitter threads about them, which is my first Twitter thread experience in my life. It's very strange to plan those out. That's not me.
Yeah, I enjoyed those.
I appreciate that. I'm glad somebody did. You know, it's absolutely mind blowing because you like, I couldn't exaggerate or make this stuff up if I tried. Like, I couldn't script something that's this wild. There were these 2 early fight cards, or it was 1 fight card. He won twice in a night, and it was portrayed as like a 1-night 4-man tournament. Happens all the time. Happens all the time in anywhere around the world, basically.
Yeah.
And it was posted there, and it was just part of his early record. And we were able to speak to the referee on the list of who the referee was for that fight, allegedly, and the organizer for that specific fight company to reach out to them and say, hey, can you tell us about this fight card? And the organizer's like, we didn't run that's not on our records. We didn't do that. And the referee is like, yeah, I was across the country reffing another event that night. So I don't know this cat, never heard of him. Sure, whatever. If I'm on his register or whatever, that I have no idea. And we were able to determine works of fiction and just kind of peel those away. Other fights, there was a venue, and it seems like a simple thing, to check in on it. But we can't. Ukraine's got a couple things to work on right now. They're dealing with international issues, and my heart goes out to them. That this one fight card that happened was in this one venue, the Safari Hall. It's called the Safari Hall. Well, here's the problem. This city there's no such thing as the Safari Hall. Never existed. There's no building. There is a Safari Hall across the country, but that was busy with like a concert that night. So like, it's all just a absolutely magnificent and horrifying, just a house of cards that like, I've never seen anything like this. I've been working with the Fight Finder staff members for going on 3 years now in a good formal capacity. But I know the stories, and I had worked alongside Fight Finder before then, but it's a campaign at that point. It is no longer a mix-up, because sometimes fighters change their names. Like you mentioned, the name change, Artur Sherdog. That's his real name. Cool, fine. If you want to change your name to match your stepfather, sure, fine. No problem with that. No problem with even renaming Arthur to Askar. That's fine, great. Go ahead. But once you reach out to us in 2016 and say, hey, wait a second. My name is Askar. Here's my ID. It's not Arthur. That's Arthur. Well, we start having problems here because it turns into something of a more innocent to manipulative. And this seriously, 2016 is when this fighter and his representatives started this, personally reaching out to Fight Finder for 6 years. So
unbelievable.
He made it to the UFC. Yeah, Hawk. Seriously, the guy made it to the UFC. But you saw the fight.
Yeah. He was a 15-13 fighter.
Yeah.
I mean, but so I'm just trying to get into the mind of somebody. And so he gets to the UFC, he gets the call of the UFC, and his first thought is, I know my record's total bullshit, but I'm going to call Sherdog out and try to get one more loss removed from my record after I've already reached the top of the food chain.
That's correct.
I mean, it's That's unbelievable. I mean, and it's crazy that he would pursue it so hard and try to. I mean, it's not 2001 anymore.
Nope.
There's footage of all this stuff, and there's and you guys, this is a big business now. You're not putting
Yes.
together these fights for King of the Cage
Right.
or something that's taking place on an Indian reservation. These dudes are putting on pay-per-view shows that gamblers. I mean, the amount of money coming in on gambling on these fights is enough to, you know, I mean, it's just crazy that he would even go that route and think that he was going to somehow win that and not look like a total fool in the long run. I mean, he has no evidence of any of his fights, so how's he? What, are you just going to go for it? Sure, you're 32-6. Great, we're moving on. I mean,
and it's not to fault anybody else that ran into it, because we weren't far off too. Because when we get the information, we review it to the best of our abilities, and I can't speak to how it was received in 2016. I wasn't part of that staff then, so I couldn't disparage them or say, well, they missed something, because for all we know, they got something that was legitimate. It was packaged. There was Askar, and he was beating up some other guy, and it just said, hey, I'm beating up this guy. It's this other name, when it's actually an old fight. There's all those odd kinds of things. And then there's the fun ones, and these are the fun ones. And this is one I pointed out in my article in particular. Full Metal Dojo. We know Full Metal Dojo. They've grown powerful due to their fight circus events that they've held, and as a result, I have established personal relationships with the gentlemen that run the organization. And the reason I say that isn't for some braggadocious claim, but no, it's because a person reached out, identifying themselves as a promoter of Full Metal Dojo to Sherdog Fight Finder, emailed Sherdog from their account, and they said, hello, this tournament, this is my tournament. This guy didn't fight here. It was somebody else. Please remove it. We have the fight video. It's on YouTube. He's a very distinctive gentleman. Remember the Ukrainian Conor McGregor nickname due to the giant chest tattoo and the giant green on his. You can't oops and be like, oh no, it's a different guy with a huge neck tattoo. And so it's very clearly to identify. But just on the 0.0001%, because life is weird that way, I reached out to Full Metal Dojo. Hey, you don't have a guy that goes by the name of blank 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 for Jormer Bong Kong Kong as an organizer, and they're like, what? No, we don't have anybody like that. And it's those kinds of things that you could understand if somebody reached out claiming authority of an organization and said you made a mistake. Okay, that's reasonable, but we have the video. And when we had the other things, and the particular one you mentioned about the one loss that he wanted to remove, that was the one he reached out on Facebook, he and or they, because it was a team at this point, doctored up a fight poster and stuck another guy's picture on this to pin this loss on this guy. And there's a couple issues. First of all, this is an event in Anhui, China, so spoiler alert, documents in regional China are not going to be written en anglais. They're not going to have the English language popped on here. It's not a thing.
Yeah.
Because it's not for us.
Yeah.
It's for the people in the area. Just simple things like that. It also happened that the poster he had the wrong logo of the company, because I happened to have known the company, that it was the organization that was running the fight card, to be able to see, hey, that's not this organization. And then the small little tiny minuscule detail of, hey, there's the fight video. There's Askar losing to the guy introduced by that name. Like it's just, it defies description, because it's audacious, and it's unique.
So I don't remember, because I didn't watch like the event he fought at for the UFC.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't watch the post-fight press conference for that. I think that was an ESPN Plus card. Now I don't fucking watch those.
Yeah, yes.
but did anyone even ask? I don't even know if Dana White addressed this man, or has anyone ever since asked about this person, like how he got there? What did you guys do to let this person with a shady fight record? You're supposed to be the $4 billion top tier promotion on the planet, and somehow this guy managed to get in and just showed up to get knocked the fuck out. Like
the Dana wasn't there. He wasn't in the press conference. I don't remember who was running it at the time. It was a what, Fight Night 207 or something. It was one of those smaller scale ESPN Plus shows.
Yeah.
So Manifield was asked about it. And he just kind of laughed it off and said, it kind of ticked me off. It was really crazy because I don't know what the deal is. But
he was pretty open about it. I saw all the clips from him. Yeah.
But at the end of the day, the only person this hurts is this guy. Is Askar Mozharov, because he blacklisted himself from the sport because of the things he did. And this was a tough thing. We discussed this internally with Sherdog for the publication of this article, because this was a very direct. This is a very clear, here are the fight videos. In fact, there were multiple links and multiple fight videos of him losing on fights that he claimed that he never fought at. So this was a very pointed type of thing to point out, and that it was going to be coming out in fight week. But it was accurate information. There was no embellishments. My goodness. When a person reaching out on behalf of this fighter on fight week says he has several defeats at the start, which he generally lost on purpose, being a teenager, because he needed money. Like, when the person representing him is saying he's throwing fights, why I wouldn't even I couldn't make out something that wacky that somebody actually admit that to us while fighting for his fighter to change his record.
So how does this work? Does Sherdog Fight Finder being the best fight finder in the world for records and stuff, does the UFC, do they reach out to you guys? And I mean, do they get their confirmation through you? Because even if his record was wrong on Fight Finder or on Tapology or whatever other site that these guys are looking at, it's just crazy to me that they wouldn't do enough research without even looking at Sherdog to know who they're bringing into their organization. I mean, we've seen other organizations where all of a sudden the guy will have a Nazi tattoo or something crazy like that.
I remember Holler Reich was one on for a while. Yeah. That was really
so do they contact Sherdog to make these fights? Or is it like they fall back on you when they realize that they shit the bed? I mean, how does that go?
Well, I unfortunately, I don't have any knowledge of their internal vetting process. The only thing I know is that on multiple occasions, the royal we, it's any member of the Fight Finder team with authority to do so, will reach out to the UFC to inform them of some situation. Like, for instance, our team did let the UFC know, hey, we conducted an investigation, we found this, that, this is his record, and the UFC admitted the corrections and corrected it on the UFC stats, which is where that you mostly can get that information. And they did have the information correct on fight night. What I noticed that the only time I heard it touched on any broadcast was Nick Kalikas on the pre-betting UFC Fight Pass show, where he and Johnny the Greek and I think Anik were talking about that. And Kalikas made a comment about, we don't even know what this guy's record is at this point. We don't even know what he's been doing. So when it comes to that, I believe, I know for many years, before my time, it was trusted that way, because we're talking 15 years ago, Sherdog had a sharing relationship with ESPN.
Yeah,
like that's public knowledge. I'm not breaking anything weird like that. Yeah. And they shared Fight Finder and the information like that. So it was at the time a direct whatever's on Fight Finder goes here, and that's generally been the case still, because we do our due diligence. Like this investigation took a long time. I was at the ABC conference one night when I got a message from one of my colleagues saying, hey, we just heard back from this one individual in Ukraine. We were finally able to get them because they're preoccupied. And so this was, we're talking an investigation that began months ago is just bearing fruit now. And it's just how it turns out. So the UFC knows and trusts that we have this, but I have to imagine after this whole incident, they might be a little more skeptical, because I guess I'll open this can of worms. There's discrepancy about another fighter, his current UFC record, and he fought this past weekend at UFC 277 in Ihor Pettry, who is from Ukraine. and it breaks my heart because, again, this has nothing to do with Ukraine. This is a purely coincidental matter about listings of this particular fighter who competed at an event on other record-keeping databases for an event that was called Fight Against COVID-19. Now, just and it was like July 2021 or something like that. So yeah, that was the name of this event. And I say this tongue in cheek because there was no Fight Against COVID-19 event. This never happened. What we came up with, and we investigated.
I thought it was in New York City.
Yeah, no kidding. what we investigated is essentially this organization, which is a legit org over in Azerbaijan and Armenia and that part of the world, essentially put together a billing of a fight card and say they had, they had a bunch of listings here that every line they could have a fight, and they would slot something in, and they would sell the slots to the fighters to say, we're going to say that we put on 24 fights and you can fight up to twice. Would you like to pay us X amount of dollars to have us then send to Sherdog and Tapology that we carried this event and you fought? And so notorious fighters have. Some fighters that have been flagged on Fight Finder already signed up for this thing and they got bagged for it. And I believe I recently, Tapology actually, when there was a brief conversation, which the Tapo guys are great. Even though, yes, we're competitors, Sherdog and Tapo, I respect the hell out of what they do. I know exactly what it takes to get into this and do this everything and get all the information. And I believe they had the Fight Against COVID. We, for one day, maybe two, maybe a day and a half, did accept this fight card until we looked into it and went, hey, wait, no, and got rid of it because it was bogus. So it's not common that this is happening. And I want to stress that it's more coincidental that these odd situations are cropping up right now. But my goodness, guys, it's a story that, there are details I haven't released or dropped, and not because they're confidential, just because, I can talk about this.
Yeah, because you have to make sure that you don't want to put something out there and have it not be true or have it be, incorrect. Yeah. I mean, it's one of the reasons. Well, again, that's why I wanted to have you on. I mean, the thread that you're talking about, I use the Thread Unroll app on Twitter just to make it an article so I could read through it, clearly and just see where we were at. And after I read it, that's when I messaged you to come on. I'm wondering if stuff like this, like you mentioned the recent one and this guy Maskarov, I'm wondering if because one of the things that happened during COVID-19 as the UFC was kind of like the only one putting on events, and they're pumping out events more than they've ever in the history of ever. And I'm wondering, because like a lot of times when I talk to these newer guys coming up, that they see opportunity with being able to step in if the fighter gets lost and they can come in short notice. I'm wondering if this is the bad part of that. Like, the guys are stepping in with, you need a fighter in 3 days. Here's my made up record. You need a fighter, and I'm ready to go. So it's like they're rolling the dice on like whether or not the homework's going to be done by the UFC or not. They'd rather get the payday and the exposure.
Yep.
It's just
I can't name a name yet. So this isn't me being coy. We're still getting to the bottom of this. There is a prominent, not ranked, but a prominent UFC fighter that fought recently as a fairly high place on the main card that may have very well had that exact situation happen of coming off a tough loss in a notable organization, having a quick throwaway, very brief knockout win stuck on their record, and that was the thing that boosted them into the contender series. There is a current investigation, and my current belief, which is this is opinion, this isn't proved, but it's based on facts and information, is that there was no fight. Like to quote Tito Ortiz, there was never no marriage. It sounds like that this event happened, and we may have witnessed it, but there just happens to be where's 44? Where's that last fight? Where's that one with that name on it? So that is a question. Luckily, it hasn't reared its head, and a lot of our teams and Tapology and Sherdog are diligent about it because we love the hell out of this sport. Like there's no way to say it any other way that the team at Fight Finder, you know, some of these guys have been working for Fight Finder for over a decade, getting, I mean, goodness sakes, the things that they receive and personal stuff and threats and bribes and all, you name it. I wrote a very funny article. It's funny. I can laugh about it, about a death threat that I personally received, even though it was something I had absolutely nothing to do with years before my time. For some reason, thought that I was the guy to go to, and he threatened me with, you know, something like bullet in the head or something like that. Yeah. And I wrote an article laughing at him, basically, and I was able to track him down, and find out, you know, oh, we can laugh about this here. So yeah, to get through years and years of this is just absolute love and devotion, and it's also kind of a point of professional pride. Yeah. To be able to have this and have the information, and be able to say, this is it, this is the record, this is the information, this is the data, and this is how it's supposed to be. And I think that Hawk's saying that this isn't 01 anymore. This isn't the, you know, the King of the Cage, old Wet and Wild days. This is a real straight up, there's a sanctioned, or this is licensed, or this is documented. And I think there are more cell phones on the planet than people. I believe that's a real number.
I was at Wet and Wild. I sat through the rain.
Oh.
I sat through the rain as their overhead tarp that had holes in it. Every time a guy would get slammed on the mat, it would shake the whole arena, and just rain would crash down on the thing. No, not at 43. At 21, I'm sitting through Wet and Wild. Not anymore. You mentioned UFC 6 real quick. A funny story about UFC 6. Rudyard Moncayo fought in UFC 6. He fought Pat Smith. Took that famous jump, you know, kick across the cage, sent him flying across the cage. About 3 weeks later, I'm watching Extreme Fighting. I think it was Extreme Fighting 1. Rudyard Moncayo versus Mario Sperry. At UFC 6, he was 150-0. At Extreme Fighting 1, he was 150-0. So that set me off to go, wait a minute. Not everybody's Hickson Gracie out here. We got some. I think Sperry was even 250-0. And then he loses to Zinoviev later that night. I do got something for you, though.
Hit me.
It's been killing me for a long, long time.
Please.
Looking at Sherdog. It's even on, I think it's on the Underground. It's on several of them. I don't know if you got your computer and you can pull it up right here. Fight Finder Jake Shields. Pull him up. This got brought up to me a couple months ago because a bigger podcast, one of the old UFC guys does. They contacted me because they wanted to do a thing about Jake Shields. And you guys show his first 2 fights as the Cobra. Mark Hall was my main instructor growing up. I trained with him. I helped promote these events. I have the master copies for the Cobra qualifier and the Cobra challenge. Jake Shields does not fight on either one of those cards.
Oh, I love it. I love it so very much. Oh my goodness. Yes. If you have these documents.
I have the master VHSs. I've copied them onto DVD. I actually, to confirm for my buddy who called me about that other big podcast, I went through and I watched him. He's definitely not in. I have the VHS case for the Cobra qualifier with the fight card on the back. No name of Jake Shields. And the main events are definitely, the second one is definitely Yan McGee and Aaron Brink. And then the first one was actually supposed to be what's the guy? The Cannon. Shannon Rich no-showed them. He no-showed the main event for the first Cobra qualifier event.
Which is why they left off the way that it ended.
Which is
no
events. I have the backstage footage where Mark's asking people to fight. They tried to get one of my drunk friends who was like 18 at the time to fight. It was to fight Charlie Kohler, who later went on to beat some people in WFA and was a really, really, really good fighter. So I think I saved my buddy's life at that time. But I can definitely confirm, and I hate to do it because I'm a Jake Shields fan, but those first 2 fights are not wins. I don't know about Brian Warren and the Harrison guy he fought. I'm not sure where those guys aren't on the card either. I remember Brian Warren a ton from the King of the Cage days, but I don't think he ever fought in I don't think he fought in Cobra. You know, there's 7 or 8 events that he had, but yeah, I used to help promote those, and I have every one of his events. Mark Hall, you know, who's one of my buddies, about a year ago, he gave me his entire hard drive. Because so I downloaded his entire hard drive. So I have every Cobra event, which I don't think they've ever been seen. Has stick fighting with the Dog Brothers on it. Also, you can't see it, but he also gifted me the last heavyweight championship belt that he was going to award the nights the cop showed up and shut down our nightclub, our attempt to have a nightclub event. So. Like I said, I hate to do it to Jake Shields, but he might be 31 and 11 or whatever it is. So I can, if you reach out to me or you email me or text me or anything, I can do my best to send you or, I can record it on my phone, do whatever you need to try to get some evidence. But yeah, those two, that's been eating at me for 20 years because I've been going, there's no way I watched Jake Shields fight in 1999. There's just, I'd know that. I sat there as a teenager and reading fight cards, like just insanity when I was getting into the sport. So that's the one that has been eating away at me, and I finally get to bring it out that poor Jake Shields has 2 fights that I don't think existed.
It's funny because I can play the Kevin Bacon game and have a good one for you. You might have heard this one. It's about Jake Shields' opponent, World Series of Fighting opponent, John Fitch.
Mm-hmm.
Have you heard the story about the old G John Fitch fight? This was actually, it came up initially on the MMA Hour many years back. What happened is John Fitch, back in his very, very early days of his career, was fighting anywhere he could. And I believe he took a fight in Mexico along with colleague or training partners and anybody else from camp back then when he was AKA and all that, very, very early on, the Kane and all those guys who were just looking around. And this fight, Fitch himself said, my record's always been wrong. I've always had one missing fight. It was my very first win, and it hurts my feelings that it's not there. I guess it's not around there. And so all of the long stories short, it turns out that this was because this was back in 2002. So this is when Jeff Sherwood and Garrett Poe and those guys were working, and the organizers would call them on the phone or send a VHS or maybe a piece of paper, but call them on the phone is what happened in this situation from Mexico. From let's see if I can say where it was from in Mexico. It was from Monterrey, Mexico. Okay, that's where the fight card happened. Cuando Hierve la Sangre was the name. So I think that's something about blood. Anyway, and it turns out that he was fighting on a fight card with Brian Ebersol, as you remember him from Hero fame, and a couple of the guys, Jorge Ortiz, Mike French, I think was in the card. And so what happened is the accent of the promoter calling whomever was answering the phone said John Fitch. And the accent made it sound like he was John Fish. So for 20 years, we had one random 10-second knockout. This was a 10-second KO, by the way, for John Fish, F-I-S. And so we were able to verify with that John Fitch had a missing win for his entire UFC career, mind you. And I believe everything up to like maybe the Rory or Neiman fights. So we're talking, this was sitting on his chest like Jake Shields, secret wins for forever. So I love that. I very much appreciate that. And we're definitely going to have to talk about this more.
Yeah, no, we'll have to get that clear up. I actually have Mark Hall's book. I'm actually in his book. So I'm looking through to see for some of the photos of the fight cards and stuff. But yeah, no, it's just been something that's been wild and
wild.
Yeah,
it is.
Like you said, the sport's wild, man. I mean, and I don't see anything. We're probably just more to come, especially as it gets bigger and more global, and the internet has its reach. I mean, there's video and everything that gets to people faster now. But
there's also an oddity, if I may jump in here. There's a really weird thing, and I'll keep this one brief. Over, as I mentioned, in China, I was talking about the fight poster that was not in English because fight posters over there generally aren't in English. Record keeping in China is fine, but it's insular. It's China. There may be information on Chinese sites or whatever there may be, but it doesn't get out, generally speaking. Or if it does, it's because an individual within the country reaches out to point out this information.
Yeah.
So there are a litany of fighters, legitimate main UFC level and or UFC signed fighters from China who had recent massive massive updates to their records because it just wasn't out there. Like you might know the guy. I think he's had three fights in the UFC so far. He recently fought TJ Brown in June. Xia Yilan, Nurdan Xia Yilan, nicknamed Wolverine, out of China. Anyway, this cat, he's 28 years old, fights out of China, top team, talented kid, got a lot to prove. Well, it turns out he wasn't like 18 and 6 at the time. He was 37 and 10. And that's legit. And that's not like a hiding or fakery. This dude had almost 20 wins that weren't documented anywhere in any possible way you could find them. And the incredible Fight Finder team was able to pull those up. For example, this guy. And it's just absolutely Yanan Wu. We have a new win for Yanan Wu, who is a UFC fighter. So it's this sport is always going to tell us something new, and that's why I think we love it so much.
Yeah, you know, I remember Israel Adesanya when he first got into the UFC. He hinted at that. He was like, he was talking about, he's like, sometimes I fought twice a week. It's just you can't get to the record. Yeah. I mean, it's I remember when he said that, and then I know like they want to do the Performance Institute and all that stuff there now. Just because of information like that, but
it's gonna because that's gonna document things. That's going to create like a document version of the biological passport, a baseline, and so that should go from there. So I think it'll help a lot.
So I mean, with the little bit of time we have left, I mean, you were at the conference, the ABC conference, a couple of weeks ago. You were there, and Scott was there, and I know a bunch of other people that I think McGracken had some stuff being presented there with Kira Gracie and them. I mean, there was a lot going on that week. I mean, and I feel like this is the first time that conference has had so much attention on it. I don't know if it's because of the growth of MMA, because I mean, obviously they've been doing this for a while for boxing, but with MMA getting as big as it is, I mean, like, what did you take away from it? I know you got you got certified for like refereeing and judging and stuff too while you were there. Like, just talk about your experience before we let you go.
Sure, no problem. The ABC conference started. The first day was the referee training course. The second day is the judging training course. And the way it works is for most states, you take the exam, you pass the test, and then you can go to your specific state and say, "Hey, I passed the ABC test. Let's get licensed." And some states are like, "Yep, all right, we're going to just fill out the paperwork." Some other states are like, "Pass our test, and we'll be good there." Because ABC is an overseeing non-binding body, so it doesn't like certify. It just trains you and then sends you on your way to the commission, because it's just a group of the commissions meeting together. I will say, and I'm not taking credit for this because I'm just a guy from Sherdog for the past couple of years. A lot of attention was on the ABC conference because media was in attendance, because we have very loud mouths, and that I am taking credit for that part. That myself, Scott Fontana, Aaron Bronstetter, and Dan Urban, Scott and Dan are a Couchside Judges podcast, was on that earlier this week. Shout out to those boys. And we were there documenting what happened, and that helped to spread the word and inform people of what's going on. And there were a couple rule changes. I found the whole experience fascinating because I expected not antagonism, but I expected I'm media, they're regulators. There's a disconnect because I'm the one telling the story, and they may or may not like what has been said about them in the past. And I get it. I would understand their opinions about that. It was absolutely nothing like that at all. And I did briefly think, are they just kind of blowing smoke? No, the people that were there, Mike Mazzulli, the head of the ABC, couldn't have been more happy and more gracious to have the media guys attend. It's like, we tried to get media guys for years, and we were able to.
He's been pretty cool in person at Bellator events too.
And he, like I was talking about how the Fight Finder guys are crazy in love with the sport. Mike Mazzulli loves the sport. Let's be real. And the whole experience was the 2 training courses take up those first days, and then the next 3 of the conference and the presentations. And McGracken wasn't present, but he was mentioned multiple times, and his studies were referenced, and I imagine he might be there next year. It was to not just kind of rub elbows with the people who I've enjoyed and appreciated, befriending people who I've looked highly on or anything like that. the learning experience of something I couldn't have had as a
Mm.
media member. There's just some ways I'm not going to be able to look at this. I'm not going to be able to look at it from the regulatory side or even see it from their side and understand what they're going through. So to take those courses was incredibly enlightening. And it's things that straight up, I'm not exaggerating. I look at fights differently. I look at 277 from a judging capacity and from a fight stoppage capacity. I viewed the stoppage of Derek Lewis and Sergey Pavlovich, spoiler alert, differently than a lot of people would, because I understood what Dan Maragliano saw when he intervened for that fight. That I would have been on Twitter going, wah. And then I looked at it and think, okay, I can see where he was coming from. So this experience was something I recommend wholeheartedly to anybody in the media or somebody who just wants to learn more around the sport. And I couldn't help it. I thought of you, Ed. The judges test, there was a part, and I can't give away the specifics, of course, about submissions, demonstrating or not, analyzing and pointing out submissions. And I thought, oh, man, Ed would just smoke this portion. All the jiu-jitsu, everything like that, because it's very important and under heralded part of the sport is to be able to, as a judge, view this is an effective submission. He's almost got this. This is doing something. Or as a referee to go, hey, this is about to stop this fight. Which is, I wouldn't have thought about it like that to be able, because I know them from sight. I can't. I've rolled in Japanese jiu-jitsu, never BJJ, so I don't have that. So I just have my knowledge from study. But it was truly enlightening, and it was something that I recommend just absolutely completely. Next year is in Vegas, and I think I'm going to probably be attending that too.
Oh yeah, if it is in Vegas, same time of year too. Did it tell you exactly when?
Late July probably.
I might have to just do that too. I might have to just do that, because I was since we had McGracken on the podcast last, he had it on my radar. And then like you and Scott, and when I saw you guys were going, I think you asked me if I was going to make it the crazy drive, and I was just like, no, man. I think why didn't I? I mean, because it wasn't the same time, or whatever. But one of the reasons is like I don't like fucking driving that far.
Yeah, it's across the state. Yeah, the whole thing.
But no, I definitely want to go. I mean, we want to try to get on Radio Road too for International Fight Week next year too. So there's a lot going on that month, but we'll see. We'll work something out, because I got to get my ass out west, because Matt's come east enough. I got to get my ass out there more. So
I believe that from this ABC conference, next year is going to have a lot more media in attendance, which is spectacular. Not just to represent and cover it, but from a learning perspective. Like I attended the courses to learn. I work for Sherdog. I write play-by-plays for Sherdog.
On and you
Saturday night, so I can't get away to cover regional MMA in my area to shadow. So
and you want to know what you're talking about. Like
Absolutely.
I can't stand a motherfucker that tweets something, and then I look at their profile, and I look at their if they even write about it, and they talk like someone will knock the way somebody tries to do something, especially when it comes to submissions, and I'm like, you don't even fucking sweat, bro. Like, why are you saying anything? Don't even insult the guy or the guy getting submitted. Keep your mouth shut. Stuff like that aggravates me. But that's another story.
Obviously, Sherdog's mixed martial arts base. There's no doubt about that. We do see a small rise now over the last couple of years of bare knuckle fighting. Is that something? While it's still kind of in its infancy as far as not being a million organizations that are worried about or seeing out, happening right now, is that something that Sherdog might be interested? I mean, has there been any talk about maybe making a wing for that kind of fights to keep those, because like if I pull up Joey Beltran, his last fight's the S70 platform event.
I know what you mean.
In Russia there. But he's had 10 bare knuckle fights since then. Now, while it's not MMA, promoters, people getting fights and stuff, you would think that would be something that would be useful to have. I do know Tapology kind of keeps a track of that.
Yeah.
Sherdog just kind of want to stick to MMA, or is that something that you might be looking at down the line?
Well, we relaunched Fight Finder at the beginning of the year, along with the rest of the site, and did some retooling. I added some new features like weight classes to fights and championships and other little key features that I'm very happy we have, because they're little kind of quality of life upgrades. In theory, the end goal is to be the definitive combat sport database. That is the end game. That is everything. We began strictly as MMA, and that's been our main focus. That's been our bread and butter. I personally have no issue if we were to do something like that, to cover stuff like that. I can tell you, we as Sherdog are identifying bare knuckle MMA as legitimate MMA when sanctioned accordingly. Game Bread FC is one organization. Sparta over in Wyoming is another, which is literally MMA. Just take the gloves off, which is basically, you know, the old days. It's the OG days. So why is that an issue? So yeah, I think right now I don't know what our priority for development is, but I know that it is something that is on the wish list, I suppose, along with, you know, bare knuckle and boxing and kickboxing. We want to be able to just check the box and say this was a kickboxing match. And so, yes, I don't think it would be something in the relative future, but it is something that it's a dream, you know, to have that, to be able to do that, because I watch all the BK events myself, and I cover some of them sometimes, and I make sure that the forum is at least talking about them because they're interesting. Now, I don't know if there will be more because BK isn't as profitable as I thought it would be. We've seen some upstart. I think Valor had one event and didn't, and then the other one that was run by Boss Rutan that kind of fell apart.
Yeah,
that whole kind of situation. So I don't know if the money's in it for anybody besides BKFC now. But hey, man, if more famous people do it, more money will come to it, and MVP like Perry may, for all we know, be a boost moment.
Yeah.
Well, that BYB, the Data 5000 one, they have a heck of a crew and stuff working those. So somehow they're putting. I've given up trying to figure out how the heck they fund these things.
Because it's the Trigon, man. That draws the eyeballs.
Yeah.
Have you seen that, Ed? It's the 3-sided cage.
Yeah. I know. Trust me, I saw more of that than I wanted to.
Oh, good. Can you guys remember something for me? It's not an equilateral triangle because for purposes.
Yeah, there's one like a slice of pizza. Yeah.
So yes, exactly. There's one end that's more narrow, and they called it something like the Death Corner, or there's a specific funny name they gave the corner of the shorter cage,
the tighter triangle.
Yeah, something silly like that, and it's like the Death Corner or the you know what I'm talking about.
I can't remember, but
it's okay.
I do.
It's okay.
Remember.
I was more of a throwaway. It's something. Maybe one of our listeners will try and be like, "Oh my god, you idiots! It's the Killer Corner."
But listen, I appreciate you coming on, man.
Sure.
Do me a favor, if you can, shoot me links to especially the specific article for. I'll look for it, but if you could save me some time,
absolutely.
Shoot me the link for the Mozharov thing, just so folks can see where you left off with it, since we talked about it. So I can put in the description to get to folks to Sherdog too.
Appreciate it.
And then one thing I wanted to ask you, just because I mean it wasn't on my original list of questions, but because you mentioned Fightland, I don't know if you might have been the one that wrote it. I forget who wrote it. It might not be. Maybe it's from like 5 or 6 years ago. But one time someone wrote a piece like the unsung heroes of mixed martial arts for like research and records keeping or something like that. I don't remember who wrote it, but just this whole conversation we just had and the work that goes into doing the research and stuff like you do and everyone else on Fight Finder typology. It's definitely very it's tedious and it does a lot of work for folks, that a lot of folks all the way from ESPN to every other site out there references when they look for their records. So I think it's just it was actually a blessing in disguise that we mentioned the work that you guys do and Tapology too, man. I mean, I didn't even it just bears mentioning that you guys do a lot of hard work and you deserve more pats on the back for it, if not some fucking money.
I'll only take one pat in the back. I really do have to give the love to the team that I work with, because I'm like this. I like to talk. I like to tell stories. I'm the mouthpiece. Like, for instance, this Askar Mozharov story, I might have said I a lot, but that was for the purposes of storytelling. Like this was this whole Askar Mozharov situation was not a me effort. This was a team effort of just incredible work and digging and like there was an odd situation. I'll give you a very brief example. We were looking on a Chinese record video site, and we didn't have the ability to put the fighter's name in Mandarin to type it in to be able to search for it. Well, there's a little program that you can draw like an MS Paint to draw the characters. So our Fight Finder staff member drew the characters in this little program, saved it as text, punched it in the search, and was able to find fights or exclude fights like that. So it is absolutely my
Sherlock Holmes chick going on. Yeah.
Oh my gosh, the stories that I could tell.
Yeah, that's great, man.
One other quick thing before we sign off here. It's mainly the old school stuff, but there is a small history of some fixed fights in the sport. Has that ever been something that's been taught? I mean, it's not Sherdog's job to editorialize it and make their opinion on whether they thought a fight was real or not. I think there's probably 4 or 5 pretty works.
Yeah.
More than that, but it is between Pride and like UFC.
Yes.
And me being a Pride homer, fanboy, whatever you want to call it, I'd always defend Pride.
Aren't we all?
Yeah, we all are now. We weren't all like 10 years ago or 15, whatever the heck it's been now. But I've always, I've always been, there's been a UFC too. And the one with Mark Hall and Don Fry has always been back and forth. I take Mark's side. He's a personal friend. I've also talked to Don Fry and Face about it and brought it up. Maybe not the smartest move I ever made in life, but we were drinking a beer at a bar.
Say that again.
Don Fry and Mark Hall, the second time,
you mouthed off to Mark Don Fry.
No. Don't misunderstand. I would never mouth off.
I was going to say, because
then
it would just be me and Jay doing the podcast. You'd be dead.
No, but it was more a conversation. Even mentioning Mark Hall's name around Don Fry was. Yeah. I had to have a couple beers in me to even get to that point. But I've always taken Mark's side. I also go back. My story goes back to like 97, like right at like a year after the fight, a year and a half after the fight, where I was being told these stories about behind the scenes money taking hands, managers promising stuff. Mark's whole story was, you take this dive, we're going to give you basically what was Jerry Bolander's spot at UFC 12 when they finally went to the under 200 weight class. Mark got blackballed from that whatever the story was. So I already took his side, but I've always wondered, like, I guess it's hard because you can't really put an asterisk without knowing, but I feel like there's a small part of history of the sport that we need to go, like, what was it, Takada and Coleman? Let's not be stupid here. Anybody with a brain knows Coleman wins that fight 999.9 times out of 1,000. So is that something that's ever been brought up? And that's pretty much my last question for the night.
It's very funny you mentioned that, because the absolute first fight that came to mind was Takada Coleman, because oopsies, oh no, you got the heel hook. Where did that come from? Like we as adults, like, again, this is not me necessarily as a Sherdog editor, but kind of, because I have functioning eyeballs and see how everything was going. When it comes to ancient history, and I say ancient history is obviously a relative term, there's some pieces of history that are kind of grandfathered in and not really subject for review any longer. It's a tough thing to look at, because I am a data guy. I want things to be correct. I would, in my imagination, I'd be like, okay, that's a no contest or something. But, I couldn't. Me or Sherdog could never make a ruling to change the official result of that it's on the official record books or whatever it was issued on that way. So I'm kind of handcuffed that way. And there are fights that yes, I personally am aware that there was some shadiness going on and probably shouldn't. There's other fights that shouldn't be registered in Fight Finder at all. Like a very key example, Heath Herring kissing a cow. No fight ever happened. Fight didn't happen. They, for those listening, back in the OG days, the fighter named Kiss appropriately stood up, and they were doing the face-offs, and he kissed Heath Herring. Heath Herring shook his head, knocked him out before the fight happened. So there should be no fight in any database, because there can be no 0 minutes, 0 seconds of a fight. So that kind of thing is like, it's more of like a historical window than it is like something like that.
And a very popular meme now.
Of course. But then there's other ones that we know they're problematic and we won't add them. So I think that is the delineation, is that if it's in the records, I can't go back and look at Manny Reyes Jr. Historically, we have a lot of laughs about Manny Reyes Jr. and some of the fights he fought in Lord, where he was fighting in the middle of a basketball court on like the play school mats, and the guy was wearing, all kinds of nonsense. But I can't go back, or our team can't go back and be like, well, that was silly back then, so or wrong or fake back then, and kind of do something. But then there's the other ones. Like there's been a recent push, and I won't name any names. There's been a recent push for Rings, the organization that had run for a very, very long time. Well, it's conventional wisdom and known to some of us in the industry that there were some pro wrestling matches in there, and I'm using that term very, very nicely, and politic. That there were some shoots, there were some game, there was some fun. It was a show, and I'm down with that. No issue with that whatsoever. Well, there had been a push to register all Rings fights as MMA fights. Period. The end. I'm punctuating my words as such because it's kind of tough for me to process. So there's fights that are registered as MMA fights currently that never, no, they're not real fights. They're not, they're totally works or shoots or something. And me or my staff won't add them. We just, if they were in there, you got us. Like, you can think of fighters and that fought in Rings and be like, I don't think that was you guys are just having fun. I mean, Takada Pride, or Takada, some of his fights, you're just having fun. So it's a razor's edge to walk to make a call, because then once you start pushing buttons and flipping the switches, then you have to figure out, okay, how slippery is this slope? Do you get into mixed rules fights? Like there's a very, very important example. Francis Ngannou. We know Francis Ngannou. Well, he fought in France before it was legal, when it was under Pancrase rules, which in Pancrase rules over in France, there were no strikes to grounded fighters. Well, that's not MMA. You can't have no strikes when on the ground. That's too far away from the unified rules, but that was what they had to work with. So that's accepted as MMA. And I'm not going to be the one to tell Francis Ngannou 3 of his wins weren't actually wins because he wasn't punching the guy when they hit the mat. Yeah. So it is a hilariously fine line to tread, and sometimes it's a discussion, it's a conversation, because there's people who have been doing this for years and years and years, and it's always good to get their ideas and opinions. So it's something I think about. I'll put it that way, Hawk. It keeps me up at night sometimes, because I'm like, oh my gosh, if I go in there, I would just switch those, and it would make justice for the MMA world, but at what cost?
Well, I see, I just quick glance. I see you have Kiss Nakao.
It should be a no contest.
As a no contest, but then it's really the same thing as what happened at UFC 3 with Hoist Gracie and Harold Howard, exactly. which is not mentioned on Sherdog. Right. Now the Gracies might have been calling Jeff Sherwood in the early 2000s, going, "Don't you dare call that anything other than a non-existent fight." Right. But yeah, it's just stuff like that. That's. And I don't know. I'm thinking maybe like an asterisk that says questionable fight. Yeah. Something where it would lead the fan who's looking it up to maybe
then look in the story
and figure it out and make the judge for themselves.
I like where your head's at, though. That's there are some really good ideas to indicate debate about this and see here and have a story about it, or so you gotta be onto something. I think we're gonna have to talk after this.
Yeah.
Sure.
It sounds like, we're over an hour now. I think we can do this probably every other week, and probably sounds like to me. So
yeah, for sure.
And
definitely.
Don't get me started about Khabib. No, I'm kidding. I've seen all Khabib's fights. Yeah. People, that was the number one thing that people shot out at me when they were talking about Mozharov. Is all right, now look at Khabib. But I'm like, I have. Personally, I was bored one day. And there's a YouTube that has them all together. So luckily. Anyway.
Well, we went longer than we planned to, but obviously we could talk forever about this shit, because this shit is again, it's super interesting. But again, send me those links so I can I'll edit the description, make sure when I put it all live that people can get to your stuff and read it. Matt, if you could, sir, please take us out.
I will, for sure. Real quick, Jay, do you have anything you want to throw out? Do you have any handles? Obviously, Sherdog.com. Any other way people might be able to interact with you on any social media?
I'm most active on Twitter, and you can find me at Pettry, JayPettry. That's all she wrote on Twitter. And otherwise, yeah, I'm on Sherdog for everything that you need and everything you didn't know you needed.
Awesome. Well, thanks for your time again. Fans can check out the show at Combat Hour on Twitter, Coast to Coast Combat Hour on Instagram. Follow me, Matthew Hawkins, at MMA Hawk 21 on Twitter and Instagram. Give Ed a follow at Carbazol on Twitter, Carbeerzol on Instagram, and Old Head Carb on Twitch. And again, you can check out our show every week at allaccessmma.com for our video podcast, as well as MMA news and any stories they might have going. Jay, thank you for your time. Awesome conversation. And I hope Jake Shields doesn't try to hunt me down and get those 2 wins back.
Thanks, guys. This has been a blast.
Peace.